Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
So February, we are talking about opening the heart. We're focusing on the emotional body. Is that right, Chalene? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so let's talk about an open heart. What ideas have you had as we've kind of focused and thought about this Open Your Heart month of February? What's been on your mind?
What's been on my mind? My mind is I would love to open my heart. I feel like my heart's been closed for a really long time. My massage therapist, she like cranks it somehow to try and get it to open. And sometimes I feel like it cracks open. Sometimes I feel like it's opening. But I was thinking about like, okay, what stuff would I feel in my heart? And so I thought like, have you ever like done something and you're like, that makes my heart sing? Have you ever like done that? Like, so what are some things that make your heart sing?
What makes my heart sing? I think what makes my heart sing, I thought about this. So it's funny because I think of it's like a good plan. So let me explain and show you how this works for me. How this works for me. Because so there's two things. Like one is I love public speaking, but it's not because I like to be up on stage and have people look at me. It's like the whole process, because I have a date where I have to have this thing done. And then I have to think about what I'm going to say. And I'm going to come up with maybe some slides that come with it. So this creativity. And then I want those like aha moments, or I want those moments where there's tender feelings, and then I want funny feelings, and I want relatable feelings. And so to put all this thing together, it's like, it's the creation of it that I just love. And in the same kind of thread, like another way is like, I love planning like a fun event. So for instance, this coming Sunday is going to be the Super Bowl. Yes. And like, I was looking at like January 17th is when I started a note on my computer of like, ooh, what can we eat for the Super Bowl? And it's not just because I want to eat the food. It's like, it's the plan of it. It's like, okay, let's figure this out. Like, ooh, let's do that. Oh, look, this is on sale at the store. I'll grab that now. Like, it's the whole like coming together, like pulling all these pieces together and creating this like event that's fun. And like, for instance, and so like I was talking to we were like, which team are we going to vote for? And one of them was like, let's just neither of them are really our big teams, but we're going to watch. But we're like, let's just watch Taylor Swift. So I was like, yeah, man. So I've ordered some like Taylor Swift pictures that we're going to have up. Like, that's our celebration, is like, it's all about Taylor Swift this year.
You need to make Taylor Swift bingo. Like,
yeah.
If she's wearing red lipstick, then someone gets to mark it off, or she leans over and talks to his mom, or that would be hilarious.
Yeah. That's what I totally am going to do. That. It's like, just for fun. I'm like, that's a great idea. So, but the Super Bowl's always been something that I grew up, brothers playing football. So it's always been a thing. It's been a thing, but it's about the like event of it. It's like the food. So I'm making a bunch of hot wings, which it doesn't, but we have like dialed in our hot wing recipe. Like, it's not just hot wings. Like, we have dialed that in. And then I'm going to do like a cheese fondue with all sorts of like herb potatoes, like sauteed mushrooms, some sausage, some bread. I'm going to make that sunflower bread that I made that one time.
Oh, yeah.
So you can dip that in it, and then we're going to have chocolate fondue. So, because to me, I'm like, the thing about the Super Bowl is you just eat through the whole thing. Like, it's not like just a meal. So I just want stuff where you're just like going at and picking at it. And so when it all comes together, I'm just like, yeah, I have a Pinterest board for Thanksgiving. I just put all I will start making my plans for Thanksgiving weeks in advance. And it's not because it has to be perfect or anything. I just love the process of it. It makes my heart sing to like have it all come
Wow.
together. And it's like, oh, let's see, let me look at what I've got to do. Okay, so the bread has to rise, so I need to start that first, like figuring out what I'm going to make first and what time I need to wake up.
Wow.
That makes my heart sing, which is funny because I think everybody else, I think people are like, that's like a nightmare for most people, is to public speak and to host an event. Like, so this is how I know, my star chart, when she said the planet that ruled my chart was Uranus, and it's like the size, like, first of all, that makes sense. And then it's like it tilts on its side. It's just always different. It's always different than other people. And I was like, okay, maybe I can accept my difference. And so now I kind of do. I accept my difference, and I realize that that's who I am. I'm different. So those two things make my heart sing. What about you?
Oh,
what
I
makes
love
your
it.
heart-
Oh, P.S. Are you going to share those recipes? Because I'd really like
Okay.
those. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
I think musicals. Do you have a friend who I told that, and she was like, I love that for you. And I was like, thinking, I'm so sorry. I guess I'm a weirdo. But there was that show, Zoe's Playlist. Did you watch that?
Yes. I watched a few episodes of that. Yeah, it stopped going
on. If that were my life, my life would be complete. If people were just to dance out their emotions, I would love
nice.
So I love musicals. I love music that makes me feel things. So maybe that is related to my heart. I don't know.
Do you have, well, there you go. There you know how to open your heart. Do you have a theme song? Does your life have a running theme song to it?
No.
You should try it.
I should.
You should try that.
I have random songs that stick in my head, and they're like really dumb ones.
Yeah.
But
well, we're going to do a podcast on music because, that's my husband gets what he calls head messages. He started creating a playlist of all of them. And I think he has over 100 songs on that playlist.
Wow.
But every single time, it's just one of those things where the song will be random in his head, and now he's practiced enough that it's like, this is talking to me, and he'll pull up the song and he'll look through the lyrics, and it has some reference to what he's going through, or it has
that's so cool.
something for him, and so that's a big deal for him to even recognize that about themselves. But it's like, he's like, I don't know, I can't make it happen. I can't control that it happens. I don't even know how it happens. I just know it just works every time. There's some significance to it. And sometimes there's ones where like, I don't know what this is, but it's like, and so you just kind of put it on the list and you don't know, necessarily, but he's like, but 90% of the time, probably there's some kind of, that's kind of how I'm feeling,
I love
and
that.
It produces. So music is the best. Music is, I think, music is, it's both mathematical and energetic at the same time.
Oh, yeah. It is. And it's got like that poetry side to it. Like you said, it's got the counting.
It's
and
creativity.
All that. So doesn't that cross your brain?
I think
right?
so.
The right and left
I think
something?
so. Yeah. So think about, and then what is it going to do? It's going to open your heart. So you should create an open heart playlist to the songs that make you just feel. So this is what, as I was thinking about opening your heart, the first thing we have to ask is, what closes the heart? Like, we have to kind of start there.
Oh yeah.
To think about, that's the question. If we're having trouble opening our heart, then we have to talk about what closes our heart. And there's two things. Well, first of all, there's one thing, heartache. That's how you could say it, right?
I could say that
Heartache.
is probably what closed it. Like people disappointing me or failed relationships. Definitely.
Yeah. Heartache. Yeah. To simplify it, to overly simplify it, it's a heartache. That's what makes you close your heart. And heartache, I could just define, I could break down into two common things. Maybe there's more, but the ones I could think of right now one was trauma. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
And two is the hierarchy of needs. Like, sometimes it's so simple of understanding, am I hungry? Am I tired? Do I feel emotionally safe? Do I have, if you look at those hierarchy of emotions, that's another podcast I want to do, is really dive into the hierarchy of needs, because they're fascinating. We talk about them all the time. We're like, but it's like, if we really dig into each of those needs, we need to have those in order. The top one is self-actualization. So the self-actualization is to be able to understand ourselves and be safe enough and be who we are. And that's an open heart, to be grounded in ourselves. So if we don't have those things, if we don't have those needs, and that's like their needs, not just desires or wants necessarily, they're like vital, important ingredients, then we're not going to have an open heart. We're not going to have an open heart if we don't have those things.
That is so interesting. Can I cut you off? Sorry.
Yes.
My iridologist was talking to me about my health systems and everything like that. And she was like, have you noticed heart palpitations? I said, yeah. I was like, I don't really have heart issues. And she said, well, when your liver is suffering, it's pulling energy from all those other places. And so it's pulling energy from your heart because it's a strong muscle. And it's kind of the same thing as like when those other needs aren't being met, it's pulling that energy that you could use to open your heart or keep that open. Wow.
Right. Like if you're hungry or tired or let's say you're sick, you know, that physical part, that physical need. If you are sick, you know, you do not care about someone's art project or beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Like, you don't care about the beauty of the sky. You know, like you're sick. You don't have the capacity. I love the word capacity because you don't have the capacity to think beyond that, you know? So it's, those things have to be taken care of, but we really value in this country, especially those people that succeed without those things. Like we really lift them up. We make them heroes because they've done what's a bite beyond, you know, they haven't needed, you know, they were starving and they helped everyone else, you know, like,
yes.
Or they, you know, they lost a child and then they went and helped everyone else, which I think that can be an authentic move for some people, you know, like they've gone through this hardship, they've cycled through these cycles, and now they're on this end of the spectrum. They're on this end of the journey. But there's some people, and so, but those people that are like really suffering and they listen to that person, they're going to just start serving to feel better versus going through all the motions to get to that.
So that's a numbing.
Yeah, it becomes a numbing thing, even if it's exactly the same action, right? Because they're trying to force an outcome where this person has had this loss, they've integrated, they've grieved, and now their heart sings to help other people.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a big difference between same action, but big difference. So those higher, I mean, so that's, to me, there's just always room for compassion about feeling like your heart isn't open. There's got to be some compassion because with it, for it being closed, it was heartache. And to kind of just go into the trauma, which I talk about trauma all the time, but there's two things that are so distinct about trauma to understand trauma, that it's a nervous system issue. And to give some example about where we often think of trauma as like an event or a memory. We'll say it's like a memory.
Well, and don't you think we all agree that there's like a spectrum of trauma, and we should all agree that this is really hard and this one's not really hard. Right. But it's not that way at all. Right. Sorry, I interrupted.
They call them big T traumas, which if you have a big T trauma, a capital T trauma, you know, we think of like major kinds of abuse, veterans that have seen death in war, you know, like we put them on a very small, like it's a big, huge T trauma that everybody would understand. But those small T traumas are individual, you know, like if like here's a, you know, if music was important to me and then I'm in a conversation where everybody's dogging music, that's going to affect, that's almost, you know, I could walk away from that with some energy in my nervous system that's uncomfortable, you know. It's going to start to add more things like something's wrong with me because I don't like this, you know. It's going to start a pattern of these small T trauma that now you're in another room and someone brings up music and you're like, what are they going to say? Because that's really important to me, but all these people didn't like it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And how do you, I mean, like that's a small trauma. Like that's not something that people would be like. But then what happens is you go into a room and that music like topic comes up and your body has a reaction, right? Your body has a reaction. And people are like, what's wrong? And you start to tell thoughts. You start to tell, you know, you start to be like, well, I just like music, or you're trying to make words make sense of this reaction that your body has had. And that's difference between just a thought process of it's like, I have this belief that music's bad. It's not a belief that music's bad. You actually have a belief that music is good. You just had this interaction where where something that was valuable to you was not reflected in the people around you in a way that made you feel like something was wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that
That's really
created an
dissonant.
imprint. Yeah. It creates an imprint in your system where it's like, I never want to feel that again. So maybe I just will stop liking music, or every time that topic comes up, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. That's the smallest version of that. Let's say you're in that conversation about everybody hates music, and you're just sitting there. If I put myself in that situation and hear everybody saying the opposite of how I feel, right? Whatever the topic is, and they look at each other as if you're dumb if you like music, right? They're just like, everybody's like agreeing, yeah, totally. And you're like, I'm alone here. Something's wrong with me, and all that stuff. I'm going to get very quiet. I'm going to get very small. My movements are going to become really close and protective, right? But the truth is, I love music. So when I talk about music, and it's authentic, I'm going to be like, I love music. Like, oh my gosh, it's so great. And there's
there's a big difference. Right? Wow.
There's a big, big difference. So because I'm shutting down, that lack of movement about what's really true for me is the trauma. It's the clumping down. It's the clenching down. So I was talking to her, and she talked about her parents were divorced. So she, from the age of 2, was living from one house to another, several times every couple of days, moving from house to house. And of course, each house has their own routines. They're totally different. One of the homes, there was step siblings in the home, and the step sibling, they lived there full time. So she comes in as a guest. So you come in as a guest, you're going to act differently than if you're there at all the time, right? So there was this step sibling who was kind of cruel. And I don't know what was happening, but she ended up with this wound, right? Like it was a terrible wound. And
like a physical wound?
Like they were like accidentally, like this knife accidentally like stabbed in her. Like it wasn't like this was being mean, but she had like this, she got this wound. I don't know the whole story of how it happened, but she had this wound. And the way, as she's describing it to me, she's like, yeah. So then when I went to my mom's like, what happened? And she's like, oh, like I got stabbed, they're like, what? Like this big reaction, right?
Yeah.
And but her reaction was like, oh, right. So she did not have the appropriate reaction to that situation because it wasn't safe for her to do so. So I told her, I says, what if we were playing like charades? What if we were playing charades and you picked up this paper, was like, somebody got stabbed with a knife, and you've got to get people to say that. I said, you're going to make very big, big facial expressions, big body expressions. Like it's going to be huge, because that's what would happen. It's supposed to happen when you get stabbed. You know what I mean? Like you're supposed to like cry or like, ouch,
run around.
Like, oh, like whatever. And you didn't do that. She intuitively knew it wasn't safe to do that. So I said, so that's where it's in the trauma. That's where it goes into the trauma part of the body, rather than a thought or a belief. Like, the thought or belief could be, like, maybe I deserved that, then we might be in, that might be a thought. But it's like, because she did not have the reaction, that's the pent up energy in the body. That's trauma.
So then it's the trauma covering up the heart so that it doesn't get hurt? Or
it closes the heart, because it's like I've got to make sure that hurt doesn't happen again. That's why we close our heart. It's part of the nervous system. It's like, here, this is good, and this was fun, and this was lovely, and this is terrible, and we never want that to happen again. So anything that gets close to that. So, anytime she probably, had to go back to that house or whatever, there's going to be a piece of you that feels an energetic, or like, a physical, like contraction or lump in your throat or pit in your stomach. But especially as little kids, we don't get to voice those. So we just deal with them somehow. And the best method is to not have those happen in the first place. So if we close our heart, then problem solved. We don't have to get hurt again. think about like Brene Brown, it's armor. It's like your heart is broken. So it's not just it's not that I just close my heart. I take armor and put around it because it's so tender. You know, that heart is the portal. It's like this. I always thought of that. I'm like the portal. It's like the portal to all things, you know, it's of love, you know, love. And it goes back to the other part of the needs too, because sometimes what we do when we want to open our hearts is we think that means I got to help other people. You know, like we think of that as like being open to other people, and I've got to be kind and loving to other people. And as I thought about that, I said, that's kind of like telling your car that's out of gas, I need you to drive me. I need to drive to the gas station to get gas. It's like, but they don't have any gas. You know what I mean? But we do that to ourselves. It's like, I need to have, you know, we can't open our hearts and give other people love until we give it to ourselves, until we have our tank is full, right? Our tank has to have some,
or at least some,
right, some in it in order to be able to do that. But we kind of run a reversal that way. We kind of think we got to sacrifice. You know, we definitely go into like, I've got to be a better person. You know, I've got to do these things which are really giving love away, you know, doing things that is deserving of that love.
Well, I think you're chasing the worth that you're worthy of love.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And you'll never catch it because you've got to have it to give it.
Right. Yeah. and it's not that it's going to be depleted once you have the love in your heart, but it's that you have to have the color red to color red.
Right. And that's the other thing. The second thing is like there is that feeling, and I can put words to it, but it's a feeling that there's just a finite amount. You know, if we have our open heart and we love people, that somehow it's going to run out. It's not a thought. You know, it's not like there's not a logical reason, I should say. There's not a logical reason for that. But it feels that way. I know that feeling. You know, it's like it's just this scarcity feeling of running out. And it takes a few times to practice to realize that it's not going to run out. But that's why we have to do all that stuff. The hierarchy of needs has to happen. You know, the trauma has to be at least, I don't know if we have to have all of the trauma gone. We just have to have some grief for the trauma. We have to know that it's there. We have to allow it to be, because that's the biggest thing. You know what I mean? To like allow it to be and not have resistance to it. And that takes some work. You know, it takes some work. It's the quickest thing to be like, something's wrong with me. Nah, you know, like, no, we don't want it to be. We don't want anything to be wrong. But it's because we needed compassion. We don't give compassion very well for people that are suffering. We want them to try harder. We want them to, because it feels so good to overcome an obstacle, but you have to have it's got to go in a natural course of things. It's got to happen in that authentic way, or in the journey of it. You know, it's along the journey that you can't just skip the journey. You know, it's intentional with it.
It's like crawling, walking. You have to crawl before you can walk. And even those, I've heard, I don't know all the research, but kids that learn how to walk before they crawl actually have to learn how to crawl. Yeah. At some point, because there's certain developmental things that have to happen when they're crawling.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like it's like a balance thing, or it's like it's something. It's something about keeping the brain moving left or right. Yeah, it's fascinating.
So, you develop your heart before you can truly give it. Yes?
Yeah. You have to. Yeah, you've got to have the ingredients to make it. You've got to have the ingredients to be able to do it. And like, so, you know, heartache. If you think about, if I had to act out heartache, you know, it would be grief.
Oh boy, yeah.
It would be grief. And what we're grieving is what happened and what did not happen.
Okay.
Both of those things we grieve. Because some things that happened to us, they were painful, they were hard. But the thing that gets overlooked a lot in trauma is the things that did not happen. The things that did not happen that needed to happen, those needs. No, those needs. Or we were given, I wish I had that. I kind of didn't want to. I was going to pull it up, those hierarchy of needs, but I want to do another episode together about those because we could just talk so long about those. But it's like physical is number one is physical needs. So warmth, food, and sleep, like those are the physical needs. And then we start moving into, some emotional needs, some safety. Like we don't have emotional safety. We need that. And yet, if I am emotional, if I'm vulnerable, like I did something bad, like I made a mistake. I made a mistake as a kid or as an adult. And I've got to go, quote, confess that to somebody. I'm a bad person because I made this mistake. But it's like, so then I learned not to make mistakes, or I learned that I'm just a bad person because I didn't have emotional safety there, and that emotional safety doesn't have to be words, but here's an example of unsafe is a look where it's like horrifying, right? Like a horror, somebody gives you a look that's like disgust or whatever, like you let go, you could learn real quick. Don't do that again, And so, but what didn't happen was tell me what happened, what was going on for you at that moment, or how can we help you do better next time? This bit of safety where we want to discipline this person so that and what we're actually doing is creating a trauma so that trauma response comes in and makes them not do it again versus they make a choice to not do it again. It's like we put it into their response system, especially little kids. You give them a spanking and they're supposed to, but that's the thing is once we've moved into the trauma, there's no learning there. You don't learn, your brain is not turned on in trauma. So they're not learning something better. They're not learning a different way.
So as you process grief and is that break the armor? Yeah. Or what breaks the armor?
I think, that compassion, because that's the thing is the armor, it's not like, I feel like there's like this idea that like, I shouldn't have put the armor on, like some shame about having armor on. And that's like shame. That's the equivalent of having shame for digesting your food or shame for breathing in your air. Like, do you really need another breath? Like you just had one.
Wow. Yeah.
How many breaths do you need? So can you just cut back on half your breaths? Because it's a little much.
Gosh.
Yeah. And you don't.
So obvious when you say that way.
It's so obvious that way, but that's exactly, your heart closes because it was hurt.
Yeah.
And that full compassion for like, you didn't close, you don't keep it closed because you're not strong enough to keep it open. It doesn't have the safety that it needs. That's it. And so that's why, when you go through the things that you need to do in a day, you're creating, that's what you're doing. You're creating safety in your systems, mental safety, emotional safety, physical safety, spiritual safety, all those. That's what this stuff's all about, is creating safety. And then once I feel safe, then I can go out and try. I can go out and explore. I can go out and test. But I can't do that if I'm not safe. Or if you do that if I'm not safe.
Wow.
So that's and you'll feel that safety. I don't know. Let's talk about that. Maybe is that safety a singing? I think the singing goes even beyond that. You have to have that safety, and then you go into what your heart sings, what makes your heart sing.
So, but if your heart's closed, you wouldn't be able to feel that sensation.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that we go through different periods of time, because I think we have our heart closed on some areas and not on others. When you're having a great day and everything just seems right, going right. It's not that hard to keep your heart open.
I wanted to talk about what does the heart feel like in the four bodies? Like what would an open heart feel like in all bodies? And
Okay.
so I went on Psychology Today, just Googled it, but like what the four bodies would look like if the hearts were open. And I need your help with the last one.
Yeah.
So it says if in the physical body that it would feel like warmth and relaxation. And I can see that, is that you're not so worried about, I think like when my heart feels closed, I feel hypervigilant because I'm always looking for ways to like guard it even more almost.
Right.
Instead of just kind of relaxing. And yeah, I noticed that I think in my marriage, I don't know, that's probably the best example I can have is that when I'm, you know, I'm not vulnerable. I don't share my deep feelings or my desires because I just don't feel like I'm going to be safe. And it's only my feeling. I don't even think that's reality.
Right.
It's just my feeling.
Yeah, totally.
So, and then emotional is the emotional body, empathy, compassion, and an even keel. It says emotional. What is like an emotional even keel?
Well, it's just
not.
It's appropriate, you know. Yeah, I think you can be angry and have an open heart, right? You can be angry and have an open heart. Anger doesn't close it necessarily. It's all of the emotions are important. It's just if it's appropriate, you know, is it an appropriate time? So
if there's that you're allowing it,
right? Exactly. So that's what that means to me. It's just it's like, you know, because that's the thing. People are like, well, I'm just not happy all the time, and it's like, okay, good, because that's normal. Good job.
Yeah.
We don't hear normal. We don't look. No. We can't hear normal. You know, we have all the emotions. They're there from the very beginning. We don't, except for shame. We pick up shame, but everything else is there from the beginning. It's there down in the roots, you know, of our soul.
Yeah.
Emotions.
Like the emotions from inside out, right?
Yeah.
They're
just there. And when you get older, they become more complex. Usually that's another part of it, is to really, we kind of try and force ourselves to feel one thing, you know, like if I'm going to be somewhere, like I'll be so nervous when I went the day my grandbaby was born. I was so excited, but I had this piece of me where I could feel anger in there. And I was like, I'm frustrated because I'm like, I can feel anger. And I, you know, in my logical mind, I'm not angry at my son. I'm not angry, you know, I'm not angry not angry at anybody, but I could feel this anger. And as I stopped and thought about it, there was some, you know, that were very similar things from this first grandbaby to my first baby. They were both born in December. You know, first grandchild, you know, like very much similars, and some difficulties had happened in my birth. And I was that little girl that's like, it's fine. You know, like it was fine. Everything's fine. And I should have said, like, I should have grieved. I should have been like, this was hard. This was not, there were some things that weren't fair. There were some things that were hard, that were difficult. And like fairness doesn't mean it was somebody's fault. You know, like we always think it's someone's fault necessarily. And it could be, but it was just like, that was hard. That was more than it needed to be. And so then as soon as I could kind of, and it took me a while, even though I had awareness of it, it took me a few hours, right? You're just like, this anger, you know, but luckily, you know, I have someone to talk to about it. And because they held safety for me, then it went away. And like when it goes away, it's almost like, I don't even remember having that feeling. Like, you know, like he'll bring it up. My husband, like it was him. I was talking to him. And then like, if he might bring it up the next day, and I'm like, yeah, I guess. But it's like, it's totally different than it was before, you know, totally different. But normally I think my old self would have been like pushing that anger away, like, and maybe berating myself for having this anger, which was maybe this part of, you know, because I was like, no, this is a happy occasion. What's wrong? You know, and if I told somebody I have some anger, but this is a good day. You're right. It is a good day. Of course it's a good day. but there's these complex things that happen, and it's about shutting those away. That's the shutting of the heart, is when we really don't, one of the ways is don't allow those things to exist. We're resisting those things, resisting it. That's why the compassion is the grief is the key, because that's there for a reason. We don't just, emotions are things that we can kind of conjure them up, the sensations of them, right? Like I can think of, like we talked about the open heart, I can conjure up that warm sensation in the heart chest. I can conjure that up. But if I'm having if I'm like super stressed out, I can't just change that feeling on a dime. It has to process through. That's the thing about emotions. They will, especially if they're attended to, they will cycle themselves through. We don't stay with an emotion. They call them energy in motion. We don't stay with an emotion for very long at all.
Will you talk a little bit about the drug therapy in Canada that you were telling me about, where they sit with the people while they do the drugs?
Yeah. So Gabor Mate, he was the doctor. He's written many books. He's so amazing. And he took a job later in his life over this clinic. And, he was this prestigious man, and he shouldn't, I think if I remember right, like this was not like an upgrade job, but in Canada, they had this system where they would, they just had another way. I don't know who invented it. It wasn't him, but they were doing this new thing where they were like, they understood that addiction has to do with, it's a trauma. Like it's a coping mechanism, right? And addiction is all about taking what's uncomfortable and making it go away, making you feel better. So they decided, like, if they kind of treated it like that, if they treated it like because people call it a disease, if they treated it like any other disease, what would that look like, right?
Okay.
Well, if I came in with this disease, the doctors and nurses would take care of me. They would give me the things I needed, and those kind of things. So they had decided, they were doing an experiment, I believe. And so they would give them drugs. So he tells a story. He says, it was the man that actually was the addict telling the story. You can watch the show. I think the show is called, I will have to put it in the show notes. I'll make a note. It's called like Return to Wholeness or something like that. Like that's literally the name of the show, which is why I had to watch it. So here's this addict guy. He says, this man, Gabor comes up to me and he says, will you come to my clinic? And I promise I'll give you all the drugs that you need. And it's like, who's going to be like, sure. They'll be like, what's the catch? Right. He's like, what's the catch?
Yeah, right.
He's like, there's not a catch. I want to help you. And this is what we're going to do. And he's like, well, how much? And Gabor says, however much you have in your pocket, I'll make sure you have in your pocket at all times. Right.
Okay.
And he's like, okay, because as an addict, that's the other half of your story is trying to get the drug, right? So there's a lot of stealing, or there's things that happen to be able to get that, right? So without that part of his life, that can be gone. I can have that be gone for you. So he did. He says, and he said, yeah, I had the drugs. I don't remember which one was his. A lot of them are heroin. They would have clean water, they have clean syringes, and they would just let them shoot up right in this clinic.
Wow.
But what they did have in this clinic was somebody standing there being with them and witnessing, being with them and talking to them like a nurse. And, like a nurse would be coming into you and checking your vitals and checking on you. And what they found over time, this man himself, he says, within 9 months, I'm off of drugs.
Wow.
Then they literally gave him as many drugs as he wanted. But it was the relationship that healed, that was the most healing. It was the relationship. It was the safety that they created for these people.
I guess in my mind, when you told me that story, I just felt like they were giving them love in a way.
Yeah. It's safety and love. Love and safety, those are the same, right? Like
are they? Okay.
They're very similar. If you're feeling love, that's the most safe place you can feel. But they were safe to be themselves. They were safe to have, it's like, we're not going to try and open your heart. We're just going to be with you in your closed heart.
Yeah.
And in that
Even if you're in your
relationship,
most vulnerable
right.
of your like addiction, like the actual moment, you think about that, like
Mhm.
thinking about that makes me so uncomfortable thinking about sitting with someone while they're having a drug
Right.
experience. Because, I've been taught for so long, my programming is like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong.
Right.
But just like that complete acceptance almost, it was like
Mhm.
complete acceptance.
Yep.
And then he felt like, okay, I'm good. The people I know in my life that have been addicted to drugs
Mhm.
definitely have relationship issues with
Mhm.
their family, breakdowns like
Yeah.
that. So it totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That
Most of the time, the addiction is trying to cover up the pain of not being safe at some point in your life, not having the safety.
yeah.
It's a lack of safety. I mean, that's a probably a core wound, that happened. And when you have that, like you talked about before, you have those situations that are like, that were difficult. That's goes deep. And your
Mhm.
system wants to say, let's never do that again.
Right.
It's one of the people, and in fact, even like there's even like different, I think there's 4 core like brain, what are they called? Like and they're, they talk about like we have different it's not receptors, it's like I can't think of the word right now, but it's like we have like there's like one is like, it's almost like, to me it's almost the 4 bodies. It's like a mental, an emotional, a physical, and there's certain people where it's like they're related to the different chemicals too. So like, if someone they've somehow their system has used dopamine more, then that's where they're going to be more likely to use those kind of drugs that provide dopamine. Where I think about, I mean, if someone that's more like I don't have my things right now, but like people are going to be more, their circumstances created them to value like a physical endorphin, right? Maybe they're like the endorphins. They're going to be the people that run, they're going to be Ironmen, right? They're going to be Ironmen.
Okay.
They're going to be, but I guarantee you, some of those Ironmen, if you talk to their family and I said, is this person who's an Ironman, are they addicted to this? I bet you the family would be, I could use that word. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's being used.
It's socially acceptable.
It's socially acceptable, totally socially acceptable, but it's causing the same kind of relief. It's used in the same kind of way to relieve or to bring in positive feelings, that endorphin versus the dopamine. But they're going to be totally fixated on it, and need it every single day, in the same way as somebody would have an addiction or like a drug addiction, or an alcohol addiction. It's like, I need it every single day. Well, this person,
Right.
I need to go to the gym every single day. And if I don't, they almost have the same, when I think of the movements of somebody who's anxious, it's almost the same thing as somebody who like an alcoholic without a drink. You got the jitteries, like,
Wow.
so anyways,
I have questions. Let's go back to
the heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one I have mental, and they talked about a healthy perspective, and this was really interesting to me, is wishing others well, is what it said.
I love that.
Mentally love. And I think when I'm not feeling that way, I definitely have more let's see, like jealousy. Sorry, that word is hard to come by.
Yep.
And
envy, jealousy. Yeah.
is that because I don't feel complete? So
well, I mean, I think it goes into like, there's a finite amount, and that once, like, I don't have enough. Like, it's a scarcity. It's like, so it's like, I wish you well. And that doesn't mean I don't want my, like, if we understood the infinite of the universe, of what's available, like it's endless. The pattern that we are giving is an endless pattern. Like we talked about the breathing. We do not sit there and like conserve our breathing. We don't sit there and wonder, like we don't spend our time worrying about the air running out too often. It's just natural. But if we had asthma, if we had some kind of disruption to that, maybe we would, right? Maybe we would. So
disruption.
So the ability to have, to say, there's enough love in the world and I feel satisfied, in my own self. So therefore I feel satisfied giving you, it's like, it's whole. It's like, it's not just 50% for me and 50% for you. It's 1,000% for me and 1,000%. It's endless for me and it's endless for you. That's the truth about love.
Wow.
And what was the word they said? Like just wanting the best for.
Yeah, so it's healthy perspective and wishing others well.
Yeah, wellness, wishing someone well, hoping that someone has a good day doesn't take from me at all, and it doesn't separate from me at all in me having a good day. But that's the thing is, and my brain can say, yeah, that makes sense, but my nervous system might not feel that way. It still might feel like, no, but I just feel like there's not enough. Like I feel stuck, or I feel nervous, or I feel, and that's when we know it's more trauma based, or needing some grief, or needing some compassion, that kind of thing.
I can see too that if I felt that way, I feel like my brain would be so free to do other things instead of like, I don't know, always worrying about that and trying to maintain that equilibrium or whatever. It would just be like, oh my gosh, like it's free. My brain is free.
Yeah, your capacity opens way up.
Yeah, totally. And then the fourth body is spiritual. And it didn't say anything. It didn't have that listed. What would you say to spiritual?
So if you're open heart in the spiritual body, I feel like that's like the ultimate peace. It's just like, it's a trust. It's like totally in the moment. We're not worried about the past. We're not trying to be in the future, because the thing is that the feeling of love, which is what we get when we have the open heart, which I think, which, like I say, you can have anger love, you can have sad love, you can have, fear, you can have all these languages or all these emotions with love, but the open heart makes all the difference, right? The open heart makes all the difference. But it's like, it's like this piece of in the moment, being in the moment, just it's, again, I think it's that enoughness. I think it's also, I think it's a recognition of our own divinity. It's acceptance of our own divinity, because when we have to put them all together. But see, if I understand my divinity, then I look at someone else and see their divinity. If I look at someone else and see their divinity, I'm looking up at them. I'm putting them up on a pedestal if I don't feel like I have it within myself. Right?
Yeah.
And so, but if I have it within me, if I do the work to feel that way within me, to practice, it's a practice to where that it feels comfortable to claim your own of this divine beingness within you, then it's so much easier to see it in everyone else,
Yeah.
But that open heart, just, you can't, once you declare even within yourself that your divinity and none of your systems close down, that's how you don't have to worry about an open heart.
Is that self-actualization almost? Like,
I think so, yeah, like transcendence. That's the key. But we think we're trying to earn it out there, but it's really about allowing it within here. And then my capacity is so big. If I am divine, what kind of limits do I have? What kind of limits do I have? And I'm not going to, and those limits aren't going to be selfish limits. I'm not going to say, well, great, then I can just go take whatever I want. No, it's more about the share with other people. It's more about the relationship connection. The spiritual body is all about connection. So I'm connected. Yeah, I'm connected with that open heart.
Isn't that the highest pinnacle of Buddhism?
Maybe.
Like recognizing that, and then recognizing that you're a part of everything.
Yeah.
You're not just.
Yeah. That's the big Zen. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you can do it on all sorts of levels. If you think about the elements of, the periodic table, that's the ingredients, and we're all just made out of those ingredients. We are all the same. We are all one. In fact, DNA So, in the 90s, they were trying to map the genetic code, and they were hoping, this is what they were hoping. They were hoping they would get this map, and it said, oh, blue eyes, and oh, there's a cancer gene, and we're just going to go and rip that cancer gene out, or we're going to, like it would just map our being, our humans, and we would like fix the world. But they found that when they did that, so humans have 26,000 bits of DNA. Is that how it works? But anyway, and then
I trust you.
Yeah, it was like 26,000. And then the like fruit fly that lived a day had like 22,000. They were like, they expected, we're such complex beings. We have the same DNA as, so we share the same DNA, 99.2%, 99.7%, one of those, with every living thing on the earth, trees, grass, elephants, like even like the monkeys that we come from, it's like within a degree, different than everything else. We are the same genetically as everything else, because we know what the elements are made of. The elements, we've got that helium, we've got oxygen, we've got nitrogen, we've got carbon, that's all we have to work with. So we really literally are. And where did those things come from? From space and the stars exploding and chemicals coming together. Like, it's when they say there's that we're made of stardust, that's what it's talking. It's like a literal thing. It's not just fun, it's not just fun. Or when they say, we come from the earth and to the earth will return, literally, literally. And that starts to just bring up so many thoughts of wonder, which is another spiritual body thing. Awe and wonder. It's like, wow, that's just amazing. Wow. And it's so easy, you just go, wow. And the whole judgment of it just goes away, because it's like, that's just amazing. And I'm part of that. That's me. Right. And it's not better than, it's not less than. It's just open-hearted. It's just free.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for talking about this with me. Okay, you wanted to end with something to help us?
Yeah, so I wanted to just kind of do a little exercise to just kind of feel into that heart space, feel what an open heart can kind of feel like. So one of the first things we can do is to breathe. And we, especially women, that we don't let ourselves breathe fully into our belly, because we're supposed to suck it in. We're supposed to, but for just a few minutes, let's just let our bodies be what they are.
Okay.
And breathe deep in the belly. Breathe in and out, and let that belly come in and out. This really sends a message to the nervous system that says we're safe. So breathe in and out in that deep belly, and like a couple more breaths. And then as we breathe one more time, and we breathe a few more times, actually, I want you to start imagining that the breath comes in and out of your heart. So you're just putting some intention, putting some attention to your heart space, literally that part in your chest, and allow that breath to come in and out of that heart. And just start to bring in some of those sensations that are safe. So almost some, some safety. So imagine you're in a place, what it feels like sensation wise to have the perfect temperature, to have like a pleasant smell, to be in a place that has maybe like, all of your favorite foods are there. The sights are beautiful. You can hear sounds, so that all those sensations come and create that safety, safety. All the comforts are there. And notice what that feels like. Sometimes when I do that, when I take a deep breath in, it kind of feels like I'm taking in some like laughing gas. I get the little buzzes going on, or maybe sometimes I get warmth. Again, there's that warmth. But use that physical sensations, because the physical body is the communicator. So if we can get those physical sensations to arise, then it can start to communicate to the other bodies. It can start to send thoughts that are positive and safe. It can send safe feelings, and it can say safe connections and bring meaning into that. And just take this little heart picture of what that feels like to have, just be in that safe place. And as we just want to expand that feeling to be more and more of our time in the day. You know, if you ask yourself in this heart space, with your heart space open, you know, about loving other people, it's like, sure. It's not like totally excited and like, yeah, let's do it necessarily. It's more like, okay, it's just more some calmness to it. It's just allowing. It's just unafraid. It's just open. It's just free. It's just curious. It's just calm. And then go back to that place. You had the sounds, you had the smells, you had the sights. Go back there whenever you want and bring those sensations up inside of your body anytime you want. And if it's not changing things as quickly as you want, then recognize, oh, this is extra hard then. You know, again, like Michael Singer, it's like, oh, there must be a reason then. And then, oh, the poor, that, like, oh, let me, you know, like, oh, sweetheart, like, I feel it. That's okay. You know, I'm feeling it with you. You know, you're almost being your own witness to like, it's okay. That means it must be extra hard. It must be extra difficult.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Feel empowered every day with wholeness videos, meditations, downloads, classes, and more by joining the Wholeness Library at thewholenessnetwork.com.